Hey there, welcome to another edition of Ask Ron. Today's questions all came from the No Bull Forum over at musculardevelopment.com. Got some great people posting over there. I encourage you to come over and join the discussions that we have. In the meantime, let's get some questions. Big Mike Cox, my man Mike, down in Florida, he asks, when MD had athletes under contract, did any of them write their own articles or answer their own Q&A, or were most ghostwritten? So let me explain that we did used to have Flex Magazine and MD for many, many years. Each of us had a stable of athletes that were exclusive to us. They could not do interviews with any other magazines. They could not take photographs for any other magazines. We paid them a monthly salary to be exclusive and with our athletes. And we had anywhere from 10 to 20 under contract at any given moment in that era. Part of their responsibility, and in a lot of cases, their only responsibility was to do their column every month. And when I say do their column, most of the time that meant me coming up with questions, calling them on the phone and getting their answers. I would take notes. This is old fashioned. I would write them down. I would also allow them to promote whatever they wanted to promote. They'd talk about what was going on in their career or their life at the moment. Two guys stood out that actually wrote their own. And when I say that means the first one, Antoine Vallant, Antoine from Canada, Montreal, now in Toronto. He had a section of his own in a larger section called Young Guns, where we would have anywhere from 4, 5, 6 different younger pros. And he had his own page. It might have been 2 pages. And he came up with his own topics, did all his own writing. And you could tell it was very, very different. He has his own unique style. I love that kid. Antoine's a one of a kind. Another guy that I can say for sure wrote his own answers was Marcus Rule when he was with us for a brief time under contract. I would email him questions. His English wasn't great, but if he had the time to sit there and think about his responses, and I don't know if he had anyone helping him or not, or I don't even know if there was Google Translate back then. This would have been around 05, 06, 07. He would give his answers back to me, and I would sort of clean up because the English wasn't always, the proper grammar and things, and that would be his column. Now with everybody else, the term ghost writer, I don't like that term because it makes it sound as if I made things up, and I didn't make things up. I can't make up all those answers. I mean, it would have been a struggle because there were times when we were doing, I had to do like 15 columns every month on top of the feature articles. It's a lot of writing. So what I would do is call these guys up on the phone. I would usually have my questions. I usually had to think of the questions, obviously. Sometimes I would ask people on the forum to submit. But anyway, I'd get them on the phone. We'd go over their answers. I'd take my notes and I'd write it up. So those were their answers. Those are their thoughts, those words. And a few of the guys always insisted that I email them my finished column before I sent it off to our editor because they wanted to make sure they weren't misquoted. They hadn't said anything they regretted, which that happens a lot. That still happens today on the Ronline, where people will say something in an interview and instantly text me back saying, take out that part where I said this or that. They don't want to get in trouble or offend a sponsor or a person, whatever. It doesn't matter. But what I'm getting at is I did write all those columns for these people, but it was their own words, their own thoughts. I was merely a conduit because we were on deadline. So that meant on, say, the 21st of every month or so, it was always roughly somewhere around the 19th to 21st second. That was our deadline to go off to the printer. Everything had to be turned in by then. And you didn't want everything to come in at once because then my editor, he would have to try to proofread that, and the graphics, our art director would have to lay everything out at the last minute. So you needed a steady trickle. And if you relied on all those guys to turn in a column, a written column, email it by a certain day every month, either they would not turn it in at all, they would turn it at the last minute, or they would turn it in a week late, which when you're on a print deadline, that doesn't work. The magazine has to go out to the printer when it has to go out. Doesn't matter what your situation is. So just to make sure everything got done and we had a magazine, and this is back when MD was larger, the magazines had more pages. We used to have, at one time we had over 400 pages every month, and a lot of that was columns. People complained it was a lot of ads. The ads paid for everything, so we had a lot of content too, is what you got to understand. So if we had 400 pages and 200 pages was ads, that means we had 200 pages of solid content, nothing but content. Anyway, so there were no cases where anyone just said write whatever you want. I never did that. It was a lot of time on the phone, a lot of taking notes, a lot of transcribing, and that's how we did it. Next question, also from Mike. What was your most memorable moment in the sport? I've had a lot, but you know what? I'd have to go back to the very beginning. I started off working in the sport in 1991. I worked for a gentleman named Lou Zwick. He had a company, still does, called American Sports Network. And back then, we had the American Muscle Show on ESPN every month, and we also did event specials. So we would go to events like the Olympia, the Mr. Olympia, the Ms. Olympia, the USA, the Arnold Classic, and we would film the whole event. Great production values, boom cameras, all that stuff, and it would be edited and packaged as a 1 hour, sometimes 2 hour show on ESPN. Not even ESPN2. This is ESPN1. So anyway, that first year, I went to my first Mr. Olympia. I had started following the sport in fall of 87. And when I went to that first Olympia in 91, a lot of the guys who I had posters of on my wall and had looked up to, Lee Haney was there. Obviously, that was his 8th and final win. So I'm so glad I got to be there when he went out at his best, 31 years old with 8 Olympia titles, best condition he'd ever been in, and he went up and retired on stage. So that was a very memorable moment. Also very memorable because that was the first time Dorian Yates had ever competed in the Mr. Olympia. Prior to that, he had only competed in one show in the USA, the Night of Champions, which he had won. I'm sorry, 2, because he took second place to Momo Benaziza, the late Momo Benaziza. Then he won it the following year. And this was the first time Dorian had been seen on the Olympia stage. People wondering how he was going to compare to to Lee Haney, and he compared very, very well. Obviously, he was a very strong runner-up. Pushed Lee because he had a similar frame, same height, same amount of mass. He went toe-to-toe with Lee Haney. And that was a hell of an Olympia. That was also the first time I ever met Ronnie Coleman, who was working security for the show. He was walking around in a tight polo shirt. He had either just won his pro card at the IFBB Worlds in Poland or was just about to. In his book, he says he was still preparing for that show, but I'm not sure if he's remembering that right. So Ronnie was, people were following him around, taking his picture. Nobody knew who he was, and even I was like, "Who are you, dude?" It's Ronnie Coleman, Arlington, Texas. And I think maybe he had turned pro, but anyway, it was a great show. We had Lee Labrada in there, Sean Ray, Vince Taylor, Rich Gaspari. It was a great show. So that was probably my most memorable moment because for me, there's nothing like your first Olympia. That it was very special. I was 21 years old. Like I said, I'd followed these guys in the magazine for years, and it was all in front of me in real life. I had been to a pro show earlier that year, the Pro Ironman, which had a good lineup, but this was the Olympia. And like I said, you can't beat that lineup. Lee Haney going out as 8th. So that was a great moment. Next question. This comes from Betty Ona. Who has been the most special guest on Ronline and why? Ronline is the interview show I do for MD. It's on YouTube on the Muscular Development channel, just like this. And I started doing that a couple months after I got this job. We're online editor, which I got in January of 2017. So I've been doing Ronline now for going on 3 years. Who have been my most special guests and why? Who surprised you most by his knowledge? I'll start off with the most special guests. Franco Colombo, definitely. Having the opportunity to interview him on Ronline was, I appreciated it very much. He was someone I had seen in the magazines growing up. I saw in the movie Pumping Iron. Of course I was aware of who he was. I had seen him at various events over the years, never approached him, never met him. So to finally get to sit there and talk to him one-on-one and talk about the old days and hear his stories about, him and Arnold when they were very young and, the old days of the early days of Mr. Olympia and Gold's Gym. It was really cool. It was like talking to a living piece of history, which he was. It's very sad that he passed away a couple months back. But I'm very grateful and honored that I did get the chance to interview him a couple times for MD before he passed away. Lou Ferrigno was another guy. I got to interview Lou for Ronline a couple years back. He was there on screen with Chris Mins. They were promoting the Ferrigno legacy. And of course, we talked about the show, but I'm going to get the questions I want to ask too. I asked Lou about the old days and, bodybuilding in the 70s and his Olympia battles with Arnold and the Incredible Hulk show. I could have talked to Lou for 8 hours if I had the chance. There's all kinds of things I'd love to talk to him about, but it was special getting the chance because Lou's, even though I've known Lou because we worked together on the American Muscle Show, we did some segments with him, some training interview segments, and I'd known him around because I did live in LA for almost 10 years, so I would see him. I can say Lou knows who I am. Arnold I'm sure Arnold has no idea who I am, even though I've interviewed him. Phil Heath was another one. I got the Phil Heath interview finally last year, 2018. I want to say it was August. I'm not sure what the date was, but the important thing about that was Phil had been under contract to AMI, Flex Magazine, Muscle and Fitness, since 2005. I had interviewed him just before he signed that contract for Muscle Mag, no longer around. And I waited 13 years to get the chance to interview him again. So it wasn't until he was no longer with AMI, no longer under contract, that he came on and we spoke, and it was a great interview. And you know, I've met Phil many times, but that was probably the first time I'd ever had an in-depth conversation with him. I know some people don't like him, some people do like him. You know, whatever. I'm not going to debate that. I like Phil. I get along well with him, and I enjoy speaking with him. As far as favorites, there's a lot of people that I've interviewed one or multiple times that it's just an easy interview because I feel at ease. These are people that either I've known for a very long time or I feel like I've known them for a very long time. Lee Haney comes to mind. I have known Lee Haney a very long time. But he's one of those guys where I always come away from the interview feeling better. He's so positive, so upbeat, so uplifting that I honestly am in a better mood. Even if I wasn't in a good mood before I start talking to Lee Haney, a few minutes in the conversation, I'm feeling better. He's got that light about him. Evan Senapani, cool guy. I could talk to Evan forever. Same with Jose Raymond. You know, I've known Jose for a very long time. His brother Tito, we've only done one Ronline, but geez, me and Tito competed against each other in 1990. That's how far back we go. Bob Ciccarillo, love talking to Bob at the shows or on Skype. Just someone who loves the sport, very passionate about it, very knowledgeable about it. I could talk to Bob forever. Victor Martinez, cool guy, same thing. I feel like we're just two buddies talking. Peter McGuff, we did one Ronline. You know, Peter's somebody, I could sit down and talk to Peter for a few hours every single day. He's that knowledgeable, genuine, entertaining, witty. He's just a cool guy. I love Peter. He's had a lot of health issues. Peter, I wish him the best. I hope he's going to be around for much, much longer. Please God. Ronnie Coleman, easy to talk to. Ronnie's, no matter how much success he's had or how famous he's become, he's still the same country boy from Louisiana. He's never changed. He's down to earth, humble, good sense of humor. Jay Cutler, known Jay forever. Seeing Jay tomorrow at the New England Championships here in Boston, which he co-promotes with Steve Weinberger. Easy guy to talk to. I feel like we're just having a regular conversation. Sometimes I forget we're even recording it on video. Greg Valentino, I love talking to Greg. He's hilarious. He's got a million stories. He pulls no punches. He's not afraid to state his opinion. Not afraid to piss people off. And you know what? I'm going to say the same thing about Boston Lloyd. I've had Boston on Ronline a couple times. Tried to give Boston his own show. That didn't work because, the liability issues. He was saying things that we couldn't really have on our channel, on our website safely without looking at lawsuits and defamation of character and slander and things like that. But, I get along well with Boston. I actually like him. We disagree on things. I'm very much against site enhancement oil. He's the king of site enhancement oil. Drug doses. We differ on things like that aren't really that important. But you know what? He's a family man now. He's got a son. He's maturing. He's a good kid. He's growing into maturing and becoming a man. As you know what? I think of myself at that age, and I had a lot of growing up to do, and I hated hearing that when I was that age. When I was in my early 20s, mid-20s, and people would tell me things like that, I'd get upset, saying, "Oh, you're calling me a kid? You're saying I'm immature and I still got a lot of growing up to do?" You know what? But looking back now, they were all right. I really was immature. I had a lot of growing up to do. Some guys who surprised me with their knowledge, they didn't surprise me because I knew they were very knowledgeable people. But anytime I've spoken to Milos Sarcev, you could talk to Milos about training, nutrition, supplements, drugs all day long. He's a warehouse of knowledge. One of the most knowledgeable people in this industry on all those matters. So he's someone I enjoy because I could talk about training forever. I don't say I'm an expert. I don't have any degrees or anything like that, but I've been training for 36 years. I've trained a lot of people in my time. I was a personal trainer in my younger years. I love analyzing training and trying new things and new angles, and I could talk shop to people about training forever. So Jordan Peters is another guy from the UK. talking training with him was a great conversation. Vinny Galanti from New Jersey. He's a couple years older than me, but we have a lot of the same issues as far as, what happens to your body and I'm 50 now. I think he's 52. So I enjoy talking to people who are in a similar situation to me because we've figured out ways to train around injuries or ways to continue getting results without hurting ourselves. And, some of you aren't there yet, but you'll get there eventually. That's it. Next question. Are you this comes to us from Wham Bam. Are you still training push-pull legs? If so, how many days a week will you train? Is it 3 days on, 1 day off? Keen to hear what your diet is on train days and rest days diet. I am still doing that. I don't know if I'll do it forever, but I'm enjoying it a lot. So what I do is 1 day is push day, chest, shoulders, triceps, and I mix up chest and shoulders. I don't do all shoulders, all chest, and then triceps. I do triceps last. Not all the time, actually, believe it or not, because triceps are the weakest of those 3 groups developmental-wise, so I don't worry if I'm doing a tricep movement in the middle of that somewhere. So I'll do that. That's a push day. Next day I'll do pull day, which is back, traps, rear delts, biceps. That's a long day. Keep in mind I also do stretching and cardio after all these, so these are fairly long. I try to get out of there in 90 minutes with all that, but it typically edges closer to 2 hours with all that by the time I'm out the door. And legs. I do legs all at once. For a couple years, I was doing them hamstrings and quads on different days. Or what I was actually doing was a quad dominant day with a little bit of hamstrings, and then a hamstring dominant day with a little bit of quads. I was doing that because I was training with this guy, the Goon, Chris Griffin, who needed a lot more leg development, and we were sort of doing it that way to facilitate his leg growth. My legs they've always been a body part that responded very well. I never had problems gaining size in the legs. I trained them very hard. It's not like I didn't work for them. I worked very hard for my legs, but I could say I worked as hard, probably much harder on my arms, and they never responded the same way. So that's what I do. So typically, yes, I do 3 days training in a row, 1 day off. If I need a second day off or if something comes up, like for instance, I'm recording this on a Friday. This is my rest day, but tomorrow is the New England Championships. Judging starts at 11. I could wake up super early, get to the gym, do that. But instead, I'll take an extra rest day. I'm 50 years old. I do know that I need more rest days, and I don't take them very often. I'll take that 1 day after 3 days in a row, so it's 3 on, 1 off. But I don't often take any more than that. And I know it benefits me when I do. So when something like this comes up, there's a show tomorrow, I'm not going to go out of my way to try to train. I know guys who wake up early to train so they can go see the show, or after the judging, they'll run off to a local gym and train and shower and come back to the show. No, I don't want to do all that. I'd rather just have another day of rest, let my body recuperate. And in my case, it's not even so much the CNS, the central nervous system, because I get a good amount of sleep. I typically sleep 8 hours a night. My nutrition's on point. I work at home. It's more a case of the connective tissues. My shoulders, I bitch about my shoulders all the time. I need a complete replacement there. So my shoulders, I have shoulder pain. Elbows can act up. My right knee's been bugging me lately. My lower back. They need more rest, and I don't have a problem giving them more rest. I'll probably stay on this for a long time. I don't see myself veering away from push-pull legs. It just works very well for me. Every body part gets trained every 4th day. So I'm training every body part twice every 8 days. I don't do a whole lot for the body parts. These are not, as extensive a workout as if I was only doing them once a week, like a back day, a shoulder day. It's enough, I find I'm getting the same results without having to do as much volume, as many different exercises. My nutrition is exactly the same pretty much every day. Now keep in mind, I'm not competing. If I was competing, this would probably be different. The diet would be a little more strict, but this is how I eat every day. I wake up, have a little bit of apple cider vinegar and some water on an empty stomach. Then I cook my breakfast. It's 4 whole eggs. I'm a big believer in whole eggs. I don't believe in egg whites. To me, they taste disgusting. They smell disgusting. And you're missing out on so many good nutrients that are in the yolk. Google it if you don't know. So 4 whole eggs, and then a measured cup, just under a measured cup. Why I don't go for a whole cup of oatmeal, I don't know. So probably like a little more than 3/4 of a cup dry measure of the rolled oats. And I soak those overnight. I don't use the Instant Oats. I soak them in the water overnight. That way I can microwave them, because I'm not going to sit there in a pan and cook my oats and stir them up. And then I got to wash the pan out. And I'm too lazy. So I do that, the oats. And into that I usually put about half a cup of blueberries. Sometimes I'll throw some raisins in there. Sometimes I'll throw some natural honey in there. Again, if I was dieting, I wouldn't do that. I'd be watching my sugar intake a lot more. Okay, so that's breakfast. An hour later, I typically leave for the gym. It takes me about 25 minutes to get to the gym. So I'm hitting the weight floor about 90 minutes after that first meal. After I train, I would have either whey protein or essential amino acids. I've been going back and forth on those, along with some simple sugars. I've been doing the jelly beans. If you go to Costco, Kirkland makes this, they sell this big canister of jelly beans. I think they're the Jelly Belly jelly beans. They actually make them. It's like 42 flavors. And so I'll have a couple handfuls of those. That's pure simple sugar. I could go for like cyclic dextrin or something like that, but this is what I've been doing. It's been working fine for me. I feel I get everything I need to be recovering. Okay, so that is my post-workout shake. About an hour and a half later, I want my appetite to be ready for the food. Because in the past, I've made the mistake of eating too soon all the time, like right on the dot, 2 hours. My food wasn't digesting. I was having a lot of bloating, gas. The food, I could just tell the body wasn't able to handle it in that amount of time. So about an hour and a half later, I'll have 8 ounces of chicken breast with about a cup and a half cooked measure of white rice. Lately, I've been doing seasoned chicken from the Chicken Pound, chickenpound.com. But, I also was making my own chicken. It doesn't matter. It's chicken. You guys can get chicken. All right, so that would be my second solid meal of the day. 2 hours after that, let's say 2.5 hours after that, I have turkey burger with a slice of cheese on a potato bun. Yeah. A mug of coffee with about 25 extra grams of protein shake stirred into that, and a big apple. Yeah. There's no science or anything to that. That's just my next meal. Then my meal after that typically is had around 6:30 or so. I have about 8 ounces of lean ground turkey with some salsa in it, with some gluten-free tortilla chips crushed up and all mixed together. So, taco meat and tortillas, basically. My final meal of the day is a sirloin patty, half a cup of mixed nuts. The sirloin patty, I'll usually put some ketchup or guacamole or something on. I said I'm not dieting. And some green beans, and that's my final meal. I also keep a shaker bottle full of protein shake, and I'll sip on that. If I get up to go to the bathroom, I'll throw back a few slugs of that. Probably get 15, 20 grams of protein. It's just easier to keep it mixed like that, because I'm not going to mix up a shake at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning. So that's my diet. The only thing that changes is on non-training days. Instead of that post-workout shake, I'll just have a shake at that time with some dry Cheerios or an apple or something. I'm not competing right now. I'm just trying to maintain a certain level of body fat percentage, where I look and feel fine. I don't let my body weight creep up too much anymore. I used to try to really push it. My goal for every winter used to be, break my last body weight, and I got so fat and disgusting trying that. I'm too old to do that health-wise. Last questions. There's actually a series of questions from Glenn Hill in England. Here we go, Glenn. Has anyone turned you down for Ronline? If so, who and why? No one has turned me down as far as saying, I'm not going to interview with you. I don't want to interview with you. Either they couldn't because they were in a contract situation, or the most popular situation is they just never responded to me. They weren't interested, or maybe they don't like me. I don't know. But I don't worry about it. And you know what? A lot of times in situations where someone had said they couldn't or wouldn't or didn't respond to me, I'll reach out to them again later and they'll say yes. Maybe sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 tries, but a lot of times I do get that person for an interview on Ronline. And I know a lot of people out there are doing their own YouTube channels now and doing interviews, so I want to throw this out there because a few months ago, a young guy he started up his own YouTube channel. He's doing interviews. He reached out to me. He wanted to interview me, and I was super busy at the time. I think we were leading into the Olympia or something. I don't know what the situation was. I asked him how many subscribers he had, and this is going to sound really petty of me, okay? But I got to be real. It wasn't very many. And I was so busy, I said, yeah, I'm going to have to say no. And instead of saying, okay, thanks, he said, you know what? Dave Palumbo and Greg Valentino both did interviews with me, and they're much more popular than you. So that is a good way to burn bridges, people. I would never do that, and I suggest that if you're trying to start up your own channel or whatever, you shouldn't do that either. Podcast, anything where you're trying to speak to people in the industry, interview them, because it's a small industry. It's everybody knows everybody. You never know when you might need somebody for something. They might need something from you. We all kind of depend on each other in this industry in one way or another. We're all a lot more connected than we think we are. Trust me on that. So, when you do that, when you tell someone, it's like asking out a girl that you want to say, you want to go out with me or whatever, and she says no. And what would you say? A lot of guys, unfortunately, would say something like, I didn't really want to go out with you anywhere. You ain't all that. You're ugly anyway. Or they would spin it to try to make themselves feel better and put the girl down. Don't do that, guys. I would never do that because I know I've burned bridges in the past. I've been in this business for 28 years now. And I learned it's too small an industry to burn bridges. It'll come back to bite you in the ass sooner or later. Trust me. So if anyone's turned me down, a lot of times I will ask them later and I get the interview. Some people never get back to me. You can't win them all. You can't get every interview you want, but you got to try. Next, who is your top 3 people you still want to interview? I'd say Arnold, even though I interviewed him for the magazine, and that was a telephone interview. And Arnold had seen the questions ahead of time. He knew exactly what his responses, what he wanted to say. He had an agenda. He had a lot of ideas and points he wanted to get across. And I didn't do a lot of talking. And like I said, this is why I say I don't think Arnold has any idea who I am, because he used it as a platform. We got a cover story for MD out of it. It worked out very well, and I'm very happy and appreciative that I got to do the interview with Arnold. But I would love the chance to either do a Skype interview with Arnold, or better yet, one-on-one, sit down, real life interview with Arnold. He's Arnold. He's always going to be the man, always. Second, Jim Mannion. I'd like to interview Jim. Jim's the man who started the NPC. He took over the IFBB. He's been around the sport since the very early 70s. And, I'm sure he's got a lot of stories to tell, a lot of things I'd like to ask him. And the last one would be Kai Green, and that might happen soon. You never know. But he's a very interesting man, Kai. I haven't interviewed him for about 10 years. He was an MD athlete, and I did get to interview him a few times. He had a monthly column. But so much has happened since then. He's gone on to acting and graphic novels and, making these huge appearances with thousands and thousands of people all over the world coming out to see him. He's definitely evolved far beyond the bodybuilding champion that he was when I knew him. I'd love to talk to Kai. I think, people complain. I've even complained that he can be esoteric and philosophical, and he might not answer the question you asked directly. But you know what? You get a lot of things out of Kai that you weren't expecting and that you never would have even thought to ask. So anytime I've interviewed him, I'm not worried if he doesn't answer the questions that I ask, because I know he's going to come out with something really cool. And I just sit back and listen and take it all in, and, happy for the chance. So hopefully that'll happen. What are your goals for 2020? Still wanting to compete? I had mentioned that I might make a comeback when I was over 50, and I just turned 50 last month. But honestly, I'm in no rush to compete. A few reasons. This job, I'm the MD online editor, and I'm also the senior writer, which means I write an awful lot of content for the magazine. If I competed, and knowing what it takes to be your best in a contest, I've been at the national level, taken top 5 a few times. I do know something would have to give. Either my prep would suffer, something would have to give with my meals, my cardio, my training, or my job would suffer. And you know what? My job is what pays my bills. My son's in college. I put my daughter through college. I'm putting my son through college now. He has no student loans. We're taking care of everything for him, because I don't want him leaving college with mountains of debt like so many young people have nowadays, which I think is unfortunate. So yeah, my priority is my job. It's taking care of my family. I competed from 1989 to 2013, had a great run, met so many awesome people, had some Had some really fun experiences at all those shows. Learned a lot about my body. Always prepped myself. Looked really good a few times for me. Looked the best I could have looked. So I'm not saying I'm never going to compete again. I would like to compete again, but it's not my priority now. And I'm already over 50. I'm already in the over 50 class and will be for 10 more years. So there's no rush, guys, on my end. Another thing is I do have the belief that I'd want to go back on stage at least as good as I was last time, preferably better. And, knowing the situation with my shoulder and a couple other things, I'm not confident right now that I would be better or even as good. So until I'm certain that I could bring at least as good a look to the stage as I did before, I'm not going to bother. Because, I'm not in this. I'd love to turn pro, don't get me wrong. But I'm not in this for a pro card because I know I'm not going to. I know what my genetics are. I know where I stand. There's a lot of guys around my area who have turned pro. None of them are going to do anything as a pro. They will never place in a pro show unless nobody shows up. That would be me. I know what I look like. I know what the better pros look like, and it's no comparison. So yeah, I will compete again probably. I'm not saying definitely, and I'm not saying definitely not. I'd love to. I enjoyed competing. I loved dieting toward the end. I didn't love dieting. I didn't like being hungry and craving all these foods, but I love the challenge of seeing how far I could push my body, how much leaner I could get, how much better I could get, bring out details in certain areas I'd never seen before. It was cool. It was really cool. And I enjoyed it. A lot of guys say I don't like the actual competition part. I don't like contest day. I loved contest day. I loved being up on stage. I'm a ham. I used to do school plays and everything. I loved being up there, showing off all the hard work. And I'm competitive. I like competing with guys, and I wanted to beat them. They wanted to beat me. And it was cool to be able to beat guys, especially that were better than me genetically, but they didn't get in shape for whatever reason. They didn't get as lean as I did, and they didn't know how to present themselves. They didn't practice their posing. They had terrible posing and presentation, which I always worked very hard on making as close to perfect as possible. And that, because those are two things I could control. There was nothing I could do if somebody's going to stand next to me and they're much bigger. But I could make sure no one was going to be leaner than me. And I could make sure nobody was going to be a better poser than me. So those are two things I strived for. Final questions. Have you incorporated any advice from Dr. T or the anabolic doc? And if so, what? I'd say from Dr. Thomas O'Connor, I probably became a little more aware of my health, my cardiac health in particular. So last year I started seeing, for the first time, a cardiologist, got the full workup, echocardiogram, CAT scan, calcium score, stress test. I'm doing another echocardiogram the end of this year. So I'm staying, and I'm on a statin now. So I'm definitely staying a lot more on top of things like that. With Dr. T, it's a lot of more theoretical because a lot of the questions are about a lot of different drugs that I'm not using, or at this time I'm not going to put out the money for. So, if he gives out some advice on something that I'm not using, it's interesting. And, I keep it in the back of my mind, but it's not anything I'm really applying to myself. Some things, I don't use oral steroids very often at all. It's been quite a while. But, when he did say that sublingually was a safer way to use them, it wouldn't do as much damage to the liver and it would get into your system faster. So I would incorporate that the next time I used orals, assuming I do. Things like that. He's a very knowledgeable guy. I'm just very grateful we have the two shows because they're very different styles. Dr. O'Connor is, about health and preventative medicine and keeping current and former steroid users safe from harm, keeping them as healthy and living as long as possible. Dr. Tuliatos, he's there for some medical expertise on steroid use, which we can't get here because ethically, legally, doctors in the USA, they can't tell you how to use steroids for maximum results. They're opening themselves up to a liability, to lawsuits and things like that if they do. But Dr. T is in Greece. Things are different over there, and that's why you guys are able to submit any and all PED-related questions to him, and he's not afraid to answer. And I'm glad we have the balance. Two very different styles, but together they give us a nice comprehensive package of medical advice surrounding steroid use, abuse, and staying healthy. Man, I've gone on for a long time, so I'm going to call this a wrap for Ask Ron. Thank you for your questions. If you guys have any questions, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe if you haven't already, but leave them in the comments. I will get to them in a future Ask Ron if you want. And head over to musculardevelopment.com. We do have the No Bull forums where we do have these cool discussions and debates and things going on all the time. It's a good time. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you next time.